Harold Matthews stands at his window every morning, watching the snow fall on the quiet streets of Pine Valley. At 70, he's lived alone since his wife passed 5 years ago, finding peace in his small woodworking shop. Then one cold morning, he sees Grace Anderson struggling with an armload of firewood. Without thinking, he puts on his coat and steps outside to help. Grace, widowed at 65, hasn't asked for help in years. But something about Harold's kind eyes makes her accept. Each morning after that, they share the walk together, carrying firewood and trading stories. Two people who thought their hearts were done with love are about to discover they were wrong. Harold's morning begins with the soft tick of his brass pocket watch, a constant companion for 40 years, 5:30 sharp, just as it has been since his days at the lumber mill. He doesn't need to work such early hours anymore, but old habits have a way of sticking, especially when you live alone. His movements are practiced, efficient. Coffee first, dark roast, no sugar, a splash of cream when he's feeling indulgent. The workshop needs warming before he can start his projects, so he heads out back to stoke the wood stove. The familiar scent of cedar and pine shavings welcomes him, along with the tools arranged just so on their pegs, each one exactly where it's supposed to be. But this morning, something changes his routine. Through the workshop window, he spots Grace again, determined but struggling with her load of firewood. Yesterday's offer to help wasn't a one-time thing, he decides. He reaches for his coat. "Morning," he calls softly, not wanting to startle her. The sun hasn't quite risen, and the street lamps cast long shadows across the fresh snow. Grace pauses, adjusts her grip on the wood. "Mr. Matthews, you don't have to—" "Harold," he corrects gently. "And I know I don't have to. Would you like some coffee? Just made a fresh pot." She hesitates, and he sees the internal debate playing across her features. Pride versus practicality. He understands. He's had the same battle with himself many times since Sarah passed. "I've got some of those maple cookies from Anderson's bakery," he adds, then catches himself. "No relation to you, I assume?" That draws a small smile. No relation. Though I've been told their snickerdoodles are almost as good as mine. It's an opening, and Harold takes it. "Well, now that's quite a claim. I might need proof someday." They carry the wood together, stacking it neatly by her back door. The work goes quickly with 2 pairs of hands, and Harold notices Grace doesn't seem quite as wary of accepting help as she did yesterday. Inside his kitchen, Grace's eyes take in the details: the well-worn butcher block counter, the collection of hand-carved wooden spoons hanging by the stove, the morning light streaming through windows that could use a good cleaning. Harold suddenly wishes he'd done more tidying up. "You really do get up with the birds," Grace observes, warming her hands around the coffee mug he's provided. "Old habits from the mill. 30 years of 5:30 wake-ups tend to stick with you." He pulls out the cookie tin, "Though I suspect you're an early riser yourself." "The bakery," she nods. 28 years of 3 a.m. alarms. Retired now, but— She shrugs. The body remembers. They share a moment of understanding. The body remembers lots of things: work rhythms, familiar movements, the shape of absence in a too large bed. "These cookies," Grace says after a bite, "they're quite good. But they're using too much butter, not enough vanilla." Harold finds himself smiling. "Professional opinion. Though I probably shouldn't criticize. My snickerdoodles aren't quite what they used to be either. Arthritis makes rolling the dough difficult some days." Harold glances at his own work-worn hands, understanding all too well. Funny how things change on us, isn't it? Tasks that used to be second nature become mountains to climb. Grace finishes. She sets down her empty cup. "Thank you for the coffee, Harold, and the help, but I should get going. Same time. Tomorrow?" The words are out before he can second-guess them. "For the firewood, I mean. And coffee, if you'd like." Another pause. Shorter this time. "You really don't have to." "I know." He pulls out his pocket watch, checks it out of habit. 5:30? Grace's smile is small but genuine. 5:30. After she leaves, Harold stands at his kitchen window, watching her measured steps through the snow. His pocket watch ticks steadily in his hand, marking time in a way that suddenly feels different, more like promise than routine. He turns back to his workshop, but not before setting out a second mug on the drain board, ready for tomorrow morning's coffee. Some changes to routine, he decides, are worth making. A week of morning coffees changes things in subtle ways. Grace arrives a few minutes earlier each day, and Harold finds himself looking forward to the sound of her boots on his front porch. Today, though, she notices something different as they carry in the firewood. "You're limping," she says, concern creasing her brow. Harold tries to wave it off. Old injury acting up, weather's turning colder, but Grace is already taking more of the wood from his stack. "Maybe we should skip the workshop today." "Actually," Harold says, "I was hoping you might want to see what I'm working on." The workshop, when they enter, is warm from the wood stove. Morning light streams through sawdust-frosted windows, catching the curves of various projects in progress. Grace's eyes are drawn immediately to the corner, where a half-finished rocking chair sits draped in a cloth cover. "Is that your current project?" she asks. Harold's hands flex unconsciously. "No. That one's been waiting a while." Grace moves closer but doesn't touch the cover. She seems to sense the weight of memory hanging around it. "How long?" 5 years. 2 months. He doesn't have to check his pocket watch for that timing. "Started it the day Sarah died." Grace's intake of breath is soft, understanding. "Your wife?" Harold nods, moving to the chair. His fingers brush the cloth, but don't lift it. 43. Years together. She loved watching me work. Said she could always tell what kind of day I'd had by the way I handled the wood. "She sounds wonderful," Grace says quietly. She was. Harold pulls the cloth away, revealing the chair's graceful lines. "This was supposed to be for our anniversary." She'd been wanting a proper rocking chair for the grandkids. I had it all planned out, was going to finish it in secret, surprise her. The chair's frame is complete, the rockers perfectly curved, but the seat remains unfinished, the back spindles only roughly shaped. Grace studies it with a craftsperson's eye. "Beautiful. Work on those rockers," she observes. "That curve takes real skill." Harold feels a warmth that has nothing to do with the wood stove. "You know something about woodworking? My father was a carpenter. Not fine furniture like this, but he taught me to appreciate good work." She gestures to the unfinished sections. "Will you ever complete it?" The question hangs in the air like sawdust motes in sunlight. Harold runs a hand along the chair's arm, feeling every grain and imperfection. "Tried once, about a year after. Couldn't make my hands work right on it. Felt wrong somehow." Grace nods, and he sees in her eyes the same understanding he's noticed. Over morning coffee, the knowledge of how grief settles into the smallest actions, making familiar movements strange and painful. "Show me something else?" she asks, giving him the space to move away from the memories. Grateful, Harold leads her to his current project, a simple jewelry box with dovetail joints. "This is more my speed these days. Small pieces. Careful work." "May I?" Grace gestures to the box, and at his nod, runs her fingers along the joints. "These are perfect." "Not quite. There's a slight gap here." He guides her finger to the floor, and for a moment they're both very aware of the contact. Harold clears his throat. "Every piece teaches you something, though. That's what Sarah used to say. Smart woman." Grace's hand lingers on the box. "What's this wood? It's beautiful." "Cherry. Gets darker with age, more character." He picks up a piece of scrap, offers it to her. "Feel how smooth it can get with proper sanding." They spend the next hour like that, Harold showing her different woods, explaining grain patterns and growth rings. Grace asks intelligent questions, shares memories of watching her father work. The unfinished rocking chair sits in its corner, but its presence feels different now. Less like an accusation, more like a witness to new possibilities. When Grace finally leaves for the day, Harold remains in the workshop, looking between the rocking chair and the nearly finished jewelry box. He takes out his pocket watch, runs his thumb over its worn face. 5 years, 2 months, and 15 days. Maybe some projects just need the right time to be completed. He picks up his sanding block and turns to the jewelry box. Tomorrow will be soon enough to think about unfinished chairs. The December morning brings wet snow that clings to everything it touches. Harold and Grace finish stacking the firewood just as the flakes begin to thicken. "You should stay," Harold says, brushing snow from his jacket. "At least until it lets up." Grace hesitates only briefly before nodding. "I could teach you to make bread if you'd like. A proper thank you for all the morning help." In Harold's kitchen, Grace pulls a worn notebook from her bag. The cover is softened with age, its pages swollen with tucked-in recipes and annotations. Harold watches as she handles it with the same care he gives his finest tools. "My life's in here," she explains, turning pages carefully. "Every recipe tells a story. This one," she points to a flour-stained page, "was my grandmother's. She taught me when I was 12, said a woman should know how to make bread that could bring people home." "Did it work?" Harold asks, gathering the ingredients she lists. Grace's smile carries a hint of memory. "Tom, my husband, claimed it was the bread that made him propose, though he said that about my apple pie, too." They work side by side at the counter, Grace teaching Harold the rhythm of kneading. His woodworker's hands are strong but uncertain with the soft dough. "Gentle," she guides. "Like this." Her hands cover his, showing the motion. "You need to feel it change under your fingers." Harold nods, understanding. "Like wood grain when you're sanding. There's a moment when it tells you it's ready." "Exactly." Grace looks pleased. "Everything has its own language, doesn't it? You just have to learn to listen." While the dough rises, they share coffee and stories. Grace tells him about her first bakery job, about learning to shape loaves in the pre-dawn hours. Harold describes the satisfaction of teaching his grandson to sand his first board smooth. "Speaking of which," Harold says, "would you like to learn some basic woodworking? Fair exchange for the bread lessons." In the workshop, Harold sets Grace up with a piece of pine and shows her how to use a hand plane. Her baker's hands take to the tool naturally, understanding the importance of pressure and angle. "It's not so different from working with dough," she observes, watching the curls of wood peel away. "You have to respect the material." "That's exactly right." Harold finds himself watching her more than the work. There's something compelling about seeing her in his space, handling his tools with such care. The bread timer brings them back to the kitchen. Grace teaches Harold the hollow sound of a properly baked loaf, how to check the crust for the right shade of golden brown. "Perfect," she declares as he pulls it from the oven. The kitchen fills with the warm scent of their success. They share, the first slice still warm, with butter melting into the crumb. Harold closes his eyes at the taste. "This puts Anderson's bakery to shame," he says honestly. Grace looks pleased, but waves off the compliment. "Good ingredients, good teaching. That's all it takes. And good company," Harold adds, then feels his ears warm at his own boldness. But Grace just smiles, adding a note to her recipe book. Harold catches a glimpse of her neat script. "Taught Harold, Dequan 12, snowy morning." The snow continues to fall outside, but neither of them seems to notice the time passing. Grace shows him how to shape rolls, while he explains the differences between types of wood. Their conversation flows easily, punctuated by comfortable silences and the occasional brush of hands, reaching for tools or ingredients. When the snow finally lets up, Harold wraps some rolls for Grace to take home. She tucks them carefully in her bag, alongside the recipe book. "Same time tomorrow?" she asks, though they both know the answer. "I'll have the coffee ready," Harold replies, "and maybe you can show me that apple pie recipe that inspired proposals." Grace's laugh is warm as fresh bread. "We'll see. Though, you'll have to earn that one, maybe with more woodworking lessons." "Deal," Harold says, and watches her navigate the snowy path home. In his workshop, the piece of pine she planed sits on the bench, its surface showing the careful marks of her first attempts. He runs his fingers over it, feeling the spots where she pressed too hard or too soft, reading the story of her learning like she reads her recipes. He finds himself wondering what other stories they might write together, what other skills they might share. The thought warms him more than fresh bread, more than coffee, more than the winter sun now breaking through the clouds. The storm arrives without warning. One moment it's a typical winter afternoon. The next, Pine Valley disappears under a curtain of white. Harold watches from his workshop window as the visibility drops to nothing, his thoughts immediately turning. To Grace, the brass pocket watch shows 4:15. She should be home, he tells himself. But uncertainty gnaws at him. She'd mentioned walking to the grocery store today. When the power flickers once, twice, then dies, he makes his decision. The emergency lantern, a reliable old thing that's seen him through many winter outages, casts a warm glow as he gathers supplies. Extra blankets, matches, his thermos of coffee. The walk to Grace's house usually takes 7 minutes. Today, it takes 20, the wind trying to push him backward with every step. The lantern light barely penetrates the swirling snow, but Harold knows this path by heart now. He's nearly past her house when he spots movement on her porch. Grace, struggling with grocery bags, snow plastering her coat. "Grace!" His voice barely carries through the wind. She turns, relief visible even through the storm. "Harold, the door's frozen. I can't." Together, they force the door open. The house is dark and already growing cold. Grace's hands shake as she sets down her groceries. "Power's been out an hour," she says. "I thought I could make it back before the storm hit." Harold sets his lantern on her kitchen table, its light creating a warm circle in the darkness. "We need to get you warm." "Where's your wood stored?" "Back porch, but it's all wet from the storm. I brought some dry splits in my pack. Let's get your fireplace going." They work together, Harold laying the fire while Grace finds extra candles. Soon the living room glows with multiple points of light and the fireplace crackles promisingly. "You shouldn't have come out in this," Grace says, but her tone is grateful. "Couldn't not," Harold responds simply, adding another log. As warmth returns to the room, they settle into a peaceful rhythm. Grace makes sandwiches from her grocery supplies while Harold tells stories about other storms he's weathered. The lantern between them casts their shadows large against the walls. "I used to love storms," Grace admits, wrapping her hands around the coffee Harold brought. "Tom and I would play cards, make shadow puppets for the kids. Now they just feel empty," Harold finishes when she trails off, "like they're too big for one person." "Exactly." She meets his eyes across the lantern light. "Though tonight's not so empty." The fire pops, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the wind howls, but in here, the storm feels distant, almost magical. "Should we check the radio?" Harold suggests, more to break the growing intensity of the moment than from real concern. Grace nods, finding a battery-powered model on a shelf. They listen to reports of closed roads, emergency services on high alert. The storm is expected to last through the night. "You can't go home in this," Grace says firmly. "I'll be fine on your couch," Harold assures her, "if you're comfortable with that." "More comfortable than worrying about you walking home in a blizzard." They pass the evening telling stories, sharing memories. The lantern light softens everything, making it easier somehow to speak of harder things, of lonely nights and missing partners, of learning to be solo in a world built for pairs. "I still set 2 places for dinner sometimes," Grace confesses. "Catch myself buying his favorite cookies at the store." "Sarah's perfume," Harold responds. "Can't bring myself to move it from the bathroom cabinet." The understanding between them deepens with each shared vulnerability. When Grace brings out a deck of cards, Harold learns she's fiercely competitive at gin rummy. He teaches her his father's trick for always cutting to the ace. Eventually the fire burns low. Grace provides Harold with blankets that smell of cedar and lavender, a pillow soft with age and use. "Thank you," she says softly, pausing at the stairs, "for coming to check on me." "Always will," Harold replies, the words feeling both natural and momentous. The lantern light catches something in her eyes. Surprise, warmth, possibility. Then she's gone upstairs, leaving Harold to listen to the storm and think about how the most unexpected moments can change everything. He falls asleep. To the sound of wind and creaking wood, the lantern burning low but steady, keeping watch through the long winter night. Pine Valley transforms itself for Christmas, the town square twinkling with lights that reflect off the snow. Harold works late into the evening in his workshop, the radio playing carols softly as he focuses on a special project. The ornament takes shape slowly under his careful hands, a delicate spiral of cherry wood that catches the light. He's carved dozens over the years, but this one needs to be perfect. Each curl must be just so, thin enough to let light through but strong, enough to last. During their morning coffee, Grace notices the bandage on his finger. "Slipped with the carving knife," he explains, embarrassed. "Been a while since I did detail work this fine. Must be something special you're working on." There's a question in her voice, but she doesn't press when he just smiles and changes the subject. The town's Christmas festival is in full swing. Shops staying open late as townspeople gather for hot chocolate and caroling. Harold and Grace walk through together, their breath frosting in the cold air. "Mom loved this time of year," Grace's daughter Jenny says, joining them with a thermos of cider. She's been visiting more often since the blizzard, her initial concern about her mother's new friendship softening into cautious approval. "Your mother's cookies were legendary at these festivals," Harold remembers. "Sarah used to try to recreate her ginger snaps." "Try being the operative word," Grace laughs. "Though she made a mean fruitcake." "That she did." Harold's voice warms with the memory. "The only fruitcake I've ever actually enjoyed eating." Jenny watches their exchange with knowing eyes. "Mom, did you tell Harold about your plans to bake?" "For the church sale?" "Not yet," Grace admits. "I wasn't sure if I would. My hands—" "A could help," Harold offers. "Return some of those bread-making lessons." And so they find themselves in Grace's kitchen the next morning, her recipe book open between them as they measure and mix. Harold's woodworker's precision proves useful. With the more delicate cookies, though his attempts at icing leave something to be desired. "You're better with a chisel than a piping bag," Grace teases, fixing his wobbly lines. "Different kinds of precision?" He agrees, content to watch her, skilled hands at work. Though both need practice. They fall into a rhythm, talking about Christmases past and present. Grace speaks of her children's favorite traditions. Harold shares stories of holiday craft fairs where he sold his woodwork. Sarah loved watching. "People choose ornaments," he says, carefully crimping a pie crust. "Said you could tell true love by how long someone spent picking just the right one." Grace's hands still briefly in their work. "Tom always chose the oddest ones. Said perfect was boring." The kitchen fills with the scent of spices and butter, of memories both sweet and bittersweet. When Jenny stops by later, she finds them surrounded by cooling racks of cookies, flour dusting their clothes, sharing stories and quiet laughter. On Christmas Eve, Harold arrives for their morning coffee with a small wrapped package. Grace is already there, a tin of fresh cookies in her hands. "You didn't have to." They both start, then laugh. "You first," Harold insists, suddenly nervous. About his gift. Grace opens the package carefully, gasping softly as she lifts out the ornament. The spiral catches the morning light, casting delicate shadows on the table. "It's beautiful," she whispers, turning it to watch the play of light. Through the carved wood. "This is what you were working on." Harold nods. "Took 3 tries to get it right. The wood grain has to run just so, or it'll break when it's this thin. That's why the bandage," Grace realizes. She cradles the ornament gently. "No wonder. You were so careful, it must have taken hours." "Worth every minute," Harold says softly. Grace hangs the ornament in her window, where the winter sun catches it perfectly. They share her cookies, ginger snaps made from her mother's recipe, and watch the light play through the carved spiral. "Merry Christmas, Harold," Grace says, and there's something in her voice that makes his heart beat faster. "Merry Christmas." "Grace," Outside, snow begins to fall gently, and carolers can be heard in the distance. The ornament turns slowly in the window, casting moving shadows that seem to dance with possibility. In this moment, the space between friendship and something more feels as delicate as carved wood, as rich with promise as fresh-baked cookies. Neither of them speaks of it directly, but something has shifted, as subtle and significant as the turning of a season. New Year's Day brings more than just the promise of fresh beginnings. Grace's son, Michael, arrives unannounced during their morning coffee, his expression tight with concern. The photo album he carries under his arm speaks of preparation for a serious conversation. "Mom," he says, barely acknowledging Harold, "we need to talk." Grace's spine straightens, though her voice remains gentle. "Good morning to you too, Michael. Would you like some coffee?" Michael sets the album on the table, flipping it open to reveal familiar faces: Grace and Tom on their wedding day, family picnics, birthdays, anniversaries. "Found this while cleaning out the attic. Remember how Dad used to say these were worth more than gold?" Harold starts to stand. "I should give you privacy." "Stay," Grace says firmly, her hand brushing his arm. "Please." Michael's frown deepens at the gesture. "Mom, I'm worried. It's only been 3 years since Dad." 3 years, 4 months, and 12 days. Grace interrupts quietly. "I know exactly how long it's been, Michael. I count every morning." The silence that follows feels heavy with unspoken words. Harold studies his coffee cup, remembering similar conversations with his own daughter, Amanda, after Sarah passed. "I just don't want you to forget," Michael begins. "I'm not forgetting anything," Grace says, reaching for the album. Her fingers trace Tom's smile in the wedding photo. "Your father will always be part of who I am, just like Sarah will always be part of who Harold is. We're not trying to erase anyone." Harold finds his voice. "We're just sharing coffee and bread. Recipes," Grace adds with a small smile. "And woodworking lessons," Harold continues, warming to her lead. "And memories," Grace finishes. "Different ones, but no less precious." Michael looks between them, his expression softening slightly. "Jenny said you've been happy. Baking. Again. I haven't seen that since before Dad got sick," Grace completes. "I am happy, Michael, not the same way I was with your father. Different, but real." Harold watches as she turns pages in the album, showing Michael pictures he must have seen countless times before. But now she adds new stories. How she told Harold about the family fishing trip where Tom fell in the lake. How Harold understood exactly why she kept Tom's old tackle box. "And Harold told me about Sarah's garden," she continues. "How she pressed flowers in her Bible, just like I do. Different flowers, different Bible, same love of beauty." Michael's resistance visibly wavers. "You're really okay, Mom?" "More than okay," Grace assures him. "I'm living. That's what Dad would have wanted. Remember how he always said, 'Life's too short to watch it pass by'?" Michael finishes with her, a reluctant smile forming. "Yeah, I remember." The morning stretches on, Michael gradually relaxing as he watches them together. He stays for a second cup of coffee, then a third. By the time he leaves, he's heard enough of their easy conversation and shared laughter to understand this isn't something to fear. Later, after Michael's gone, Harold and Grace sit in comfortable silence. The photo album lies open between them, a bridge rather than a barrier. "Sarah's daughter took it harder," Harold says finally. "Didn't speak to me for 2 months after I gave away her mother's clothes." Grace nods understanding. "They want to protect us. From changing, from hurting, from living differently than they remember, from being human," Harold adds softly. They turn pages together, sharing stories of the people in the photographs and the ones who aren't pictured. Their fingers brush. Occasionally, and neither pulls away. "Thank you for staying," Grace says as the afternoon light begins to fade. During Michael's visit. "Thank you for asking me to," Harold responds. He pauses, then adds, "Amanda, my daughter, she'd like to meet you, if you're comfortable with that." Grace's smile is warm and sure. "I'd like that very much." The photo album stays on Grace's kitchen table, but now it shares space with Harold's woodworking magazines and their shared coffee mugs. Like their hearts, it has room for both old memories and new beginnings. Pine Valley's town hall glows with strings of white lights, the old clock above its doors, marking time's steady march toward midnight. Grace hadn't planned to attend the New Year's celebration, but Harold's invitation had been so naturally offered over morning coffee that she found herself saying yes before she could overthink it. Now she stands beside him, watching elderly couples shuffle across the dance floor to Moonlight Serenade. Her fingers tap against her punch glass in time with the music. "Do you dance?" Harold asks, setting down his own glass. "Not in years." Grace hesitates. "My knees aren't what they used to be. Neither are mine." Harold's smile is warm. "We could be bad at it together." The town hall clock ticks above them as he leads her to the floor. They move carefully at first, finding a rhythm that accommodates stiff joints and old injuries. Harold's hand is warm at her waist, steady and respectful. "Tom had 2 left feet," Grace says softly. "Stepped on my toes at our wedding." Sarah was the dancer in our family, taught ballroom at the community center. Harold guides them in a gentle turn. "She used to say anyone could dance if they just listened to the music instead of thinking about their feet." Wise woman. She was. There's no sadness in his voice now, just fond remembrance. They settle into an easy sway, not quite on beat but comfortable in their own rhythm. Other couples smile as they pass, and Grace notices Jenny giving her a thumbs up from across the room. The clock strikes 11, and someone switches the music to something slower. Harold's hand tightens slightly at her waist. "Okay?" he asks. Grace nods, letting herself step a little closer. The scent of sawdust still clings to his jacket, mixing with the pine and cinnamon decorations around them. It feels right somehow. "I never expected this," she admits. "The dancing? Any of it. You. The woodworking lessons. Having something to look forward to in the mornings again." Harold's step falters slightly, then steadies. "I know what you mean. After Sarah, I thought that part of life was over. The part where you wake up excited about the day ahead." They dance in silence for a moment, letting the music and the meaning of their words settle around them. The clock ticks steadily overhead, marking moments that feel increasingly precious. As midnight approaches, the crowd begins to gather near the windows, where they'll be able to see the town square's fireworks. Harold and Grace find a quiet corner, away from the press of people. 10! The crowd begins to count. 9, 8. Grace feels Harold's hand find hers in the dimness. 7, 6, 5. "Grace," he says softly, turning toward her. 4, 3. Their eyes meet, and the air between them feels charged with possibility. 2, 1. Harold leans in just as the fireworks explode outside, painting their faces in flashes of color. Their lips are inches apart when someone bumps into them, champagne sloshing. "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry." A teenager steadies herself, mortified. By the time she's finished apologizing, the moment has passed. But Harold's hand is still warm in Grace's, and his eyes still hold the question that almost found its answer. They watch the fireworks together, shoulders touching. The town hall clock chimes midnight, its familiar tones mixing with the celebrations around them. "Happy New Year, Grace," Harold says, squeezing her hand. "Happy New Year, Harold." Later, as he walks her home through the gently falling snow, they don't speak of the almost kiss. But something has shifted between them, like a piece of wood finally sanded to its perfect smoothness, ready for whatever comes next. At her door, Harold pauses. "Coffee tomorrow?" "It's a holiday," Grace reminds him. "You should sleep in." 5:30? He asks anyway. Her smile is answer enough. They both know that some routines are too precious to break, even for holidays, especially for holidays. The town hall clock chimes the quarter hour as Harold walks home, his steps light despite the late hour. In his pocket, his own watch ticks, in counterpoint, marking the beginning of a year that suddenly feels full of promise. January arrives with bitter winds and long nights. Grace finds herself touching Tom's wedding ring more often, the gold band hanging heavy on its chain around her neck. Some mornings she nearly cancels coffee with Harold, not because she doesn't want to see him, but because wanting to see him feels like a betrayal. The morning she doesn't show up, Harold waits a full hour before walking to her house, concern etched on his face. He finds her in her kitchen, staring at old photographs. "I'm sorry," she says, not looking up. "I should have called. Are you all right?" He remains in the doorway, respecting her space. Grace touches the ring at her neck. It's Tom's birthday, would have been his 73rd. Harold's quiet holds volumes of understanding. He starts to step back. "I'll leave you to stay," she says, the word catching in her throat. "Please, I need to show you something." She leads him to the living room where a cardboard box sits open. Inside, Tom's belongings are carefully preserved. His favorite sweater, his reading glasses, his wallet still holding the grocery list he'd written the day before his stroke. "I haven't looked at these since." She trails off, lifting out a worn baseball cap. "Some days I can barely remember the sound of his voice. Other days, like today, it's so clear it hurts." Harold sits beside her, careful to leave space between them. "Sarah's perfume," he offers quietly. "Sometimes I catch a whiff of it in a crowded store and have to stop walking." Grace nods, running her fingers over the cap's brim. "At New Year's, when I felt happy, really happy, and then I felt horrible for feeling happy." "I know." Harold's voice is gentle. "After Sarah, I thought being happy again would mean I loved her less somehow, like there was only so much room in a heart." Grace looks at him then, tears gathering but not falling. "How did you get past it?" "Someone very wise once told me that love isn't like a cup that can only hold so much." He smiles slightly. "It was Sarah, actually, when my mother died and I worried about loving our daughter enough." His hand moves toward hers, then stops, letting her choose. After a moment, Grace bridges the gap, twining their fingers together. "Tom used to say something similar," she says, "about how having a second child doesn't mean loving the first one less." They sit together, surrounded by memories made tangible. Grace tells him stories about each item in the box. The cap from a baseball game where their son hit his first home run. The glasses Tom was always losing and finding in strange places. The wallet she'd given him for their 30th anniversary. "He lived well," Harold observes, "was well loved." "Yes." Grace touches the ring again, but differently now. "He would have liked you, you know. Would have asked a million questions about woodworking. Sarah would have loved your bread. Would have insisted on learning all your recipes." The morning light strengthens, casting long shadows across the floor. Grace begins returning items to the box, each one handled with care, but no longer with desperation. "I'm not taking off his ring," she says suddenly. "Not yet. I would never ask you to." Harold helps her fold Tom's sweater. "Some things need their own time." When the box is repacked, Grace leads them back to the kitchen. She starts the coffee maker, the familiar routine grounding her. "I miss him," she says, measuring beans. "I always will. But I'm starting to think, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's part of loving someone well, carrying them with you even while you move forward." Harold watches her work, his presence steady and undemanding. "Sarah's daughter told me something last year that helped. She said her mother taught her that joy is never a betrayal, that finding happiness honors those we've lost because it proves how well they loved us, how well they taught us to live." Grace pours 2 cups of coffee, adding cream to Harold's the way he likes. The morning sun catches Tom's ring as she hands Harold his cup, making it glow briefly. Like a blessing, she thinks, or a permission she didn't know she needed. "Thank you," she says softly, "for waiting, for understanding." Harold's smile reaches his eyes. "Always will." Outside, January continues its cold rain. But in Grace's kitchen, something warm and hopeful grows stronger, like bread rising in its own. Perfect time. Every tool in Harold's workshop has a story. The hand plane from his father, worn smooth by generations of use. The chisel set Sarah gave him on their 10th anniversary. The lathe he bought with his first retirement check. As he shows Grace each one, the tools become bridges between past and present. "This was my grandfather's," he says, lifting a well-maintained draw knife. "He could take the bark off a log faster than any man I knew." Grace runs her finger along the blade's curve. "It's beautiful. They all are. You care for them like old friends." That's exactly what they are. Harold sets the draw knife back in its place. "Each one taught me something. Like this," he picks up a small carving knife with a distinctive handle. "Made this handle myself after the original broke. Learned more from that mistake than from a dozen successful projects." They're spending more time in the workshop now that January's chill makes outdoor walks difficult. Grace has her own workbench, a simple piece Harold helped her make. Her wooden spoons are getting better, each one showing more confidence than the last. "You have a good eye for grain," Harold observes, watching her select wood for her next project. "See how the pattern flows there. That'll make a beautiful handle." Grace positions her tools with baker's precision. "It's like knowing how dough will respond to your hands. You have to work with the material, not against it." Harold finds himself watching her more than his own work, the way she bites her lip in concentration, how her hands move with growing certainty, the slight smile when a cut comes out just right. "What are you working on?" she asks, catching his gaze. He looks down at his own project, another jewelry box, this one more intricate than the last. "Just experimenting with some new joinery techniques." Grace sets down her spoon and comes to look. Their shoulders touch as she leans in to examine the dovetails. Neither moves away. "These are different from the last ones," she notes. "Blind dovetails. Trickier, but..." He runs his fingers along the joint. "Feel how smooth that fits?" Grace's hand follows his, their fingers brushing. The contact sends warmth through Harold's chest that has nothing to do with the workshop's wood stove. "Perfect," she says softly, and he's not sure if she means the joinery or something else. They work. In comfortable silence, broken only by the sound of tools and the occasional question, Harold shows her how to use the spoke shave, standing behind her to guide her hands on the tool. Grace teaches him how to sense the wood's subtle changes, just as she feels bread dough transform under her fingers. "It's about patience," she says, demonstrating the rhythm of carving, letting things happen in their own time. Harold thinks of their almost kiss on New Year's Eve, of the ring Grace still wears on its chain. "Yes," he agrees. "Exactly like that." The afternoon light fades early, filtering through sawdust-frosted windows. Grace helps him clean up, each tool returning to its proper place. Her movements are familiar now, comfortable in this space that was once solely his. "Stay for dinner?" he asks, not for the first time. "I've got soup simmering." Grace's smile warms him more than any wood stove could. "I'd like that." In the kitchen, they move around each other with the same ease they've developed in the workshop. Grace warms bread she brought, while Harold ladles soup into bowls. The conversation flows naturally from wood types to bread recipes to memories of meals shared with others. "Jenny asked about you," Grace mentions, breaking off a piece of bread. "Said she's glad I'm spending time in the workshop, that it's good to see me learning new things. Amanda said something similar, about me baking." Harold's ears redden slightly. "Though she did suggest I stick to your bread rather than attempting my own." Grace laughs, the sound filling the kitchen's warm air. "Wise daughter you have there." Their eyes meet across the table, and something shifts in the air between them. Harold reaches out slowly, giving her time to pull away. Instead, Grace's hand meets his halfway. They sit like that, hands joined beside the soup bowls, as the early winter evening settles around them. No words are needed, like well-crafted joinery. Some things fit together perfectly in their own time. When Grace finally leaves, Harold returns to the workshop. He runs his hands over his tools, each one holding memories of today, alongside its older stories. On Grace's workbench, a half-finished spoon waits for tomorrow's lesson. The sight fills him with quiet joy, like perfect dovetails, like bread rising, like love growing sure and steady in winter's gentle hold. The Pine Valley Gazette isn't known for its hard-hitting journalism, but its local life column has always been well read. This week's edition features a photo of the Senior Center's winter activities, and there, in the corner of a group shot, are Harold and Grace at last week's woodworking demonstration. "Did you see this?" Grace asks during their morning coffee, spreading the paper between them. The caption reads, "Local craftsman Harold Matthews shares skills with enthusiastic students, including former baker Grace Anderson." Harold adjusts his reading glasses. "Enthusiastic students?" His eyes crinkle with amusement. Is that what they're calling it these days? The article itself is innocent enough, but it's the conversations at Anderson's bakery and the post office that really tell the story. Harold hears snippets as he runs errands, whispered comments about sweet and about time, mixed with the occasional too soon. Martha Chen at the pharmacy is the first to say something directly. "My George would have approved," she tells Harold while filling his prescription. "He always said you were too young at heart to be alone." Grace gets similar comments at her church circle. Most are supportive, though some carry an edge of concern wrapped in kindness. "Tom was such a wonderful man," they say, as if she might have forgotten. "It's like being teenagers again," Grace observes one morning in the workshop. "All these people watching, waiting to see what happens next." "Except teenagers don't have arthritis," Harold replies, making her laugh. The town's interest peaks when they're spotted having dinner at Luigi's, the closest thing Pine Valley has to fine dining. They hadn't planned it as a date. They were both picking up takeout, but Luigi himself insisted on setting them a table. "For my favorite customers," he declared, producing a candle and his best tablecloth. "The manicotti is excellent tonight." They stayed, more amused than embarrassed by his matchmaking. By dessert, word had spread enough that several coincidental visits from friends brought knowing smiles and poorly hidden approval. The newspaper appears again on Grace's kitchen table the next morning. "Valentine's dance at the Senior Center," the headline announces. "All welcome." "We could go," Harold suggests carefully, "if you want, or we could have dinner here instead, away from the town's loving surveillance." Grace finishes with a smile. They're interrupted by a knock. Jenny stands at the door, newspaper in hand. "So, are you going to the dance?" Grace shoots Harold a look that's part exasperation, part fondness. "We haven't decided." "You should." Jenny sits down, helping herself to coffee. "Everyone's already talking anyway. Might as well give them something real to talk about." "Everyone?" Harold asks. "Mrs. Peterson at the library says you two remind her of a Hallmark movie." Jenny grins. "And Mr. Collins at the hardware store has been telling anyone who'll listen how he knew you were perfect for each other the first time Mom came in to buy sandpaper." Grace's hand finds Harold's under the table. "And what do you think about all this talk?" Jenny's expression softens. I think Dad would want you to be happy, and Harold makes you happy. I see it every time you talk about the workshop or show me a new wooden spoon." The local paper sits between them, its presence a reminder of their shifting status from private friendship to public story. But Harold finds he doesn't mind being part of the town's narrative, not when Grace's hand is warm in his, not when Jenny's approval shines so clearly in her eyes. "So," Grace says later, after Jenny leaves, "the dance?" Harold squeezes her hand. "Only if you're ready. We could always scandalize the town by staying in and making bread instead." Grace laughs, the sound carrying clearly enough that Mrs. Johnson, walking her dog outside, smiles to herself and makes a mental note to update the church social committee. "Let them talk," Grace decides. "We've earned this happiness." The newspaper eventually makes its way to Harold's workshop, finding a home among the sawdust and tools. The photo, though small, captures something true. Two people discovering that joy can arrive in unexpected seasons, witnessed by a small town that knows how to celebrate second chances. In his workshop on Valentine's morning, Harold puts the finishing touches on a small wooden heart. Unlike the Christmas ornament's delicate spirals, this piece is solid, carved from a single block of cherry. He's worked the wood until it's silky, smooth, its surface catching the light like water. Inside, he's hollowed out a small chamber. The words he's carved there took hours of careful work. Hearts, like wood, grow stronger where they've been broken. He isn't sure about giving it to Grace. It might be too much, too soon. But when she arrives for their morning coffee, carrying a familiar-looking tin, he knows it's right. "I made your favorites," she says, opening the tin to reveal perfectly baked maple cookies, though I suspect everyone in town knows that by now. "Let them know," Harold replies, surprising himself with his certainty. He reaches for the wrapped heart. "I made something for you, too." Grace unwraps it carefully, her baker's hands gentle with the paper. When she sees the heart, her breath catches. "Harold, it's beautiful. There's more," he says softly. "Inside." She turns it over, finding the hidden seam. The chamber opens with a soft click, revealing the words. Grace reads them once, twice, her fingers tracing each letter. "You understand," she whispers. "I do." The morning light streams through his kitchen windows, catching the golden chain around Grace's neck, where Tom's ring still rests. But today, somehow, it feels less like a barrier and more like a bridge between then and now. "The dance is tonight," Grace says, still holding the heart. "But I was thinking..." "Yes? Maybe we could have our own celebration first. I could cook dinner here. Just us." Harold smiles. "I'd like that." They spend the day in comfortable preparation. Grace works in the kitchen while Harold cleans and sets the table with his best dishes. Wedding china that hasn't seen use in years. The house fills with the scent of her cooking, reminding him of other family dinners, other celebrations. But this feels new, full of possibility. "Sarah would love what you've done with her old recipes," he says, watching Grace check the oven. "She always said they needed something extra." "Love," Grace responds without hesitation. "That's the secret. Ingredient Tom could never figure out in my baking." They share knowing smiles, their lost loves becoming part of this new joy rather than shadows over it. Dinner is perfect, pot roast with vegetables so tender they melt on the tongue. They talk easily, sharing stories both old and new. Harold tells her about his first woodworking project, a lopsided birdhouse that his mother proudly displayed for years. Grace describes the time she accidentally used salt instead of sugar in a cake at the bakery. "Dance starts in an hour," Harold notes as they clear the dishes. "We could still go scandalize the town." "In a minute," Grace says. She's holding the wooden heart again, running her fingers over its smooth surface. "I want to tell you something first." Harold waits, patient, as weathered wood. "When Tom died, I thought that was it for love. That hearts only hold so much and mine was spent." She takes a deep breath. "I was wrong. Grace, let me finish." She sets the heart down carefully. "What you carved here, about hearts growing stronger where they've been broken, it's true. I feel it every morning when I wake up looking forward to coffee with you. Every time you show me how to shape wood into something beautiful. Every time you understand without me having to explain." Harold steps closer, drawn by the quiet certainty in her voice. "I'm not the same person I was with Tom," she continues. "And you're not who you were with Sarah. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we're exactly who we need to be for each other, right? Now." The space between them has disappeared. Harold reaches up slowly, cupping her cheek with a hand that smells of wood shavings and possibility. "May I?" he whispers. Grace's answer is to lean in, closing the final distance. Their first real kiss is gentle, tender with understanding and rich with promise. When they part, they're both smiling. "We're definitely going to be in the newspaper again," Grace murmurs against his shoulder. Harold laughs softly, holding her close. "Let them write what they want. Some stories deserve to be told." The wooden heart sits on the table between them. Its hidden message, a testament to love's capacity to heal, to grow, to begin again. Outside, snow falls gently, and somewhere in town, a dance is starting. But here in Harold's kitchen, they've found their own perfect rhythm. The wedding album is bound in white leather, now softened and slightly yellowed with age. Grace takes it from her shelf with practiced care, settling beside Harold on her living room sofa. Outside, February rain taps against the windows, making the evening feel intimate and close. "I've been wanting to share this with you," she says, opening to the first page. It feels right, after Valentine's Day. The photographs capture a summer wedding 40 years ago. Young Grace beams at the camera, radiant in a lace dress she'd saved 6 months to buy. Tom stands tall beside her, his dark hair untouched by grey, his smile bright with promise. "We were so young," Grace says softly. "I was 25, Tom was 27. Both of us thinking we knew everything about life and love." Harold's arm settles around her shoulders as she turns the pages. Each photo tells its story. Their first dance, cutting the cake she'd insisted on baking herself, Tom's mother crying. During the ceremony, "Tell me about him," Harold encourages. "How did you meet?" Grace's smile warms with memory. "At the bakery, actually. He came in every morning for 3 weeks straight, always ordering something different. Finally admitted, he didn't even like sweets. He just wanted to work up the courage to ask me out." She points to a photo of them laughing during the reception. This was right after his best man told that story in his speech. "Tom was so embarrassed, but I thought it was the sweetest thing I'd ever heard." The album moves through the years. Anniversary, celebrations, family gatherings, ordinary moments made special by someone thinking to capture them. Tom's hair grays, Grace's face gains laugh lines, but their smiles remain constant. "It wasn't always easy," Grace says, touching a photo from their 25th anniversary. "We had our rough patches. The year Michael was born, when the bakery was struggling, when Jenny went through her rebellion. But you got through them." "We did." Grace's hand moves to the ring on its chain. "Tom had this way of making me laugh, even when I was furious with him. He'd do something silly, like trying to bake me an apology cake, always disaster, or singing off-key until I couldn't keep a straight face." Harold squeezes her shoulder gently. "He sounds wonderful." "He was." Grace looks up at Harold. "Different from you, but wonderful in his own way. Just like I'm sure Sarah was different from me." They turn to the later photos. Tom and Grace with their grandchildren at Jenny's wedding, celebrating the bakery's 30th anniversary. The last photo shows them in their garden, just 6 months before his stroke. They're sitting on a bench Harold recognizes. It's still, in Grace's backyard. "That was a good day," Grace says. "We were planning our retirement, talking about traveling. Tom wanted to see the Grand Canyon." She closes the album gently. "We thought we had more time." Harold's hand finds hers. "We always do." Grace leans into him, the album resting in her lap. "You know what the hardest part was after? Not the big moments, holidays, anniversaries. It was the small things. Making coffee for 2, but only needing 1 cup. Catching myself turning to tell him something funny, then remembering he wasn't there. The shirt Sarah left in the dryer," Harold offers quietly. "I couldn't move it for weeks." "Exactly." Grace's fingers trace the album's cover. "But now I can make coffee and smile, remembering how Tom liked it with too much sugar. I can sit on that bench and feel grateful for the time we had, and look forward to new memories." "Yes." She turns to face him fully. "Harold, I want you to know, sharing this with you, it doesn't diminish what Tom and I had. If anything, it makes it more precious, because you understand." Harold gathers her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Love doesn't divide, Grace. It multiplies." They sit together in the gentle rain-touched darkness, the wedding album between them like a bridge connecting past and present. Grace's head rests on Harold's shoulder, and his hand strokes her arm softly, and somehow the quiet is full of both memory and promise. "Thank you," Harold says finally, "for sharing him with me." Grace's answer is to reach up and kiss him, soft and sure. The wedding album slides to one side as she turns into his embrace, and it feels right, the past settling gently into its proper place, while the present unfolds with its own sweet possibility. Harold spots the first crocus pushing through the melting snow outside his workshop. The purple bloom seems impossibly delicate against the lingering winter, but its presence is undeniable. He carefully picks it, pressing it between the pages of his workshop manual, where he records measurements and techniques. When Grace arrives for their morning coffee, she notices the flower immediately. "First sign of spring?" "Second, actually," Harold replies, pulling out the manual to show her. "You were the first." Grace's smile warms the still, chilly morning. She's wearing a lighter jacket today, and Harold notices she's switched Tom's ring from its chain to a small velvet pouch she carries in her pocket. She catches him looking and takes his hand. "Jenny helped me decide," she says softly. "It felt like time." They take their coffee to the workshop, where signs of their shared life are everywhere. Grace's completed spoons hang on the wall beside Harold's tools. Her workbench holds both carving knives and recipe cards. The Christmas ornament he made her catches morning light from its place in the window. "I've been thinking," Grace says, running her hand along a piece of maple they picked out together. "About the garden." Harold sets down his coffee. "Oh, it's almost planting time, and your yard gets better sun than mine. Are you suggesting we garden together?" There's a smile in his voice. "Well, you did say you missed having fresh herbs for cooking, and I know a thing or two about growing them." They both know she's suggesting more than just sharing garden space. Harold thinks of the ring in her pocket, of the way their lives have gradually twined together like vines. "We could put raised beds along the south wall," he offers. "I could build them, make them the right height so we don't have to bend too much." Grace's eyes light up. "And a bench for when we want to sit and watch things grow? I might know something about bench making." Harold moves to his workbench, pulling out a sketch he's been working on. "Something like this?" The design shows a gentle curve, perfect for two people to sit comfortably close. Grace studies it, her finger tracing the flowing lines. "It's beautiful, like the one in my garden, but ours," Harold finishes. The word settles between them, feeling right. They spend the morning planning, drawing gardens in the margins of Harold's manual next to the pressed crocus. Grace knows about companion planting, which herbs grow better together, which need space apart. Harold sketches modifications to his garden gate to make it easier for them to manage with arthritic hands. "Sarah loved gardening," he says as they work, "but I never had the patience for it. Too used to seeing results right away in woodworking. Tom was the same way, called himself a brown thumb." Grace laughs at the memory. "But he loved eating what I grew. Used to brag to everyone that his wife could make things grow and turn them into the best meals in town." They break for lunch, sharing the sandwiches Grace brought. The workshop manual lies open between them, its pages now filled with their joint plans. Garden layouts mingle with wood measurements. Grace is flowing. Script annotates Harold's precise drawings. "Look at us," Grace says, gesturing to their notes. "Planning for spring like we're sure of everything." Harold covers her hand with his. "Aren't we?" She meets his eyes, and the certainty he sees there matches his own. "Yes," she says simply. "We are." Later, after Grace leaves, Harold returns to the workshop. The manual has become more than just a record of woodworking projects. It's becoming the story of their life together. He carefully adjusts the pressed crocus, making sure it's perfectly centered on the page. Outside, more crocuses are pushing through the snow. Soon the garden will need attention, and the bench will need building, and their carefully drawn plans will begin to take shape. Harold thinks of Grace's ring in its velvet pouch, of her ready smile, of the way they fit together as naturally, as well-crafted joints. Spring is coming, bringing with it the promise of new growth, new beginnings, and like the crocus blooming against the snow, their love has proven itself strong enough to flourish in any season. The ring box takes Harold 3 attempts to perfect. The first is too elaborate, the second too plain. The third, carved from the same cherry wood as Valentine's heart, feels exactly right. Like the heart, it has a secret, tiny wooden hinges that make it open as smooth as butter. He works on it during the hours when Grace isn't in the workshop, carefully fitting the pieces together. The local jeweler, Mr. Klein, has been equally careful with his part of the project. A simple gold band with a pattern that echoes the grain of wood. "It's perfect," Mr. Klein said when Harold explained what he wanted. "Different from her first ring, as it should be." Now, on a mild March morning, Harold turns the box over in his pocket as he waits for Grace. She's running late. Something that never happens, and he's trying not to worry when Jenny's car pulls into his driveway. "Mum's not coming," Jenny says, hurrying up his walk. "At least not yet. She asked me to tell you." Harold's heart sinks, but Jenny's grinning. "She's at the bakery. Said something about needing to make things right." "The bakery? Where she and Dad met?" Jenny's eyes are bright. "Where she learned about love the first time. She said she needs to honor that before she can move forward." Understanding dawns. Harold looks at the ring box in his hand, then at Jenny. "Does she know that you're planning to propose?" "No. But she knows something's coming. She's ready, Harold. She just needs to do this her way first." Harold nods, tucking the box away. "Tell her I'll wait." "She'll be here by lunch," Jenny assures him. "And Harold, I'm really glad it's you." After Jenny leaves, Harold goes to his workshop. The unfinished rocking chair catches his eye, the one he started the day Sarah died. For the first time in 5 years, he uncovers it completely, running his hands over the partially shaped wood. "What do you think, love?" he asks softly. "Time to finish what we started." He's working on the chair's back spindles when he hears Grace's car. His hands are steady as he sets down his tools, as he wipes the sawdust from his clothes. Grace meets him at the workshop door, carrying a familiar white bakery box. Her eyes are bright, her cheeks flushed. "I needed to make something," she explains, "in the place where I first learned about love, to say goodbye properly and thank you," and she opens the box, revealing perfect maple cookies, to make something new from old memories. Harold takes the box, sets it carefully aside. "I understand. I've been doing some of that myself." He leads her to the rocking chair, now taking shape again after years of waiting. "Sarah's chair," Grace says softly. "Started it for her, finishing it for us." Harold takes her hand. "If you want there to be an us." Grace's eyes fill with happy tears as Harold reaches into his pocket, drawing out the cherrywood box. "I've learned something these past months," he says, his voice gentle but sure. "Love doesn't end with goodbye. It changes, grows, makes room for new chapters." He opens the box, revealing the ring nestled inside. "Grace Anderson, would you help me write our chapter?" Grace touches the box with wondering fingers, admiring the craftsmanship even through her tears. "You made this, like you made the cookies. Something new from what we know best." She lifts the ring, seeing how the pattern matches the wood grain of the box, of the half-finished chair, of all the pieces they've created together. "Yes," she says simply. "Of course, yes." The ring slides onto her finger perfectly. They kiss in the workshop, surrounded by the tools and projects that have marked their journey. The maple cookies share their sweet scent with fresh-cut wood, creating a fragrance uniquely their own. Later, they sit together on Grace's garden bench, soon to be replaced by the one Harold designed for them both. The spring air holds the promise of warmth, and new flowers push through the soil around them. "We should tell the kids first," Grace says, admiring how her ring catches the light, "before the town gossip mill takes over." "Too late," Harold chuckles, nodding toward old Mrs. Peterson, who's walking by for the third time in 10 minutes. "I give it an hour before the newspaper calls." Grace leans against him, laughing. "Let them. Some stories deserve their headlines." In Harold's workshop, the ring box sits open beside the rocking chair. Both are testaments to love's endurance, to its ability to remain unfinished until exactly the right moment. Like the spring flowers opening around them, like the hearts that have learned to love again. They have bloomed in their own perfect time. The blended family tree takes shape slowly in Harold's workshop, a collaboration between him and Grace. Each branch is carefully crafted, each name thoughtfully added. It's not a traditional family tree. Instead of reaching only backward into history, this one spreads outward like the branches of a living tree, making room for all the connections that love creates. "What do you think about adding the grandchildren's birth dates here?" Grace asks, pointing to a graceful curve of wood. Their families are gathering today for the first official dinner together. The tree will be their announcement, their way of showing how all the pieces fit. Amanda arrives first, her husband and children in tow. Harold's granddaughter, Emma, aged 12, immediately gravitates to the workshop. "Can I help with anything?" "Grandpa?" she asks, eyeing Grace's woodworking tools with interest. "Actually," Grace says, "I could use an assistant with these name plaques." Harold watches them work together, Grace teaching Emma the same gentle techniques she learned from him. The door chimes again, Jenny and Michael arriving with their families. "Dad would have loved this," Jenny says, studying the family tree. "He always said families were like gardens. They grow best with plenty of care and room to spread." Michael runs his hand along the smooth wood. "The craftsmanship is beautiful, Harold." "Grace helped design it," Harold says, noting how Michael's approval seems to mean something special to Grace. The grandchildren discover each other with the easy acceptance of youth. Emma shows Grace's grandson Peter, 10, how to sand wood smooth. Jenny's twins compare notes with Amanda's youngest about having grandparents who make things. In the kitchen, the women work together preparing dinner. Grace teaches Amanda the secret to her dinner rolls, while Jenny shares her mother's pie technique. The recipes, like the family tree, are becoming common property. "Mum seems different," Amanda tells Jenny as they crimp pie crust together. "Lighter somehow." "Same with our mom," Jenny agrees. "It's like they've given each other permission to be happy again." The men gather in the living room, Harold and Michael discussing woodworking, while Jenny's husband, Mark, shares stories about Tom's legendary fishing trips. "We should take the boats out this summer," Mark suggests. "All of us. Make some new fishing stories." Grace appears in the doorway, flower on her apron. "Dinner's ready. Harold, would you bring the tree to the table?" They've set up tables in the backyard, spring warmth making outdoor dining possible. The family tree becomes the centerpiece, its branches spreading over their first meal together. "Before we eat," Harold says, standing, "Grace and I wanted to share something with all of you." Grace joins him, their hands finding each other naturally. "We know this isn't a conventional family story, but then the best ones rarely are. This tree," Harold continues, touching the carved wood, "has room for all our stories, Tom's and Sarah's, because they'll always be part of who we are. And room for new stories," Grace adds, "new connections, new love. The children are all ready," pointing out their names, tracing the lines that connect them to both families. Emma has found the small heart Harold carved where the main branches meet. "Look," she says, "Grandma Sarah and Grandpa Tom's names are inside the heart with Grandpa Harold and Grandma Grace." A moment of quiet falls as the adults take this in. Then Jenny raises her glass. "To family," she says simply. "All of it." The toast is echoed around the table. Under the spreading spring trees, surrounded by the mingled voices of their expanded family, Harold and Grace exchange glances. The wooden family tree stands between them, its branches reaching out like welcome arms, making space for all the love they hold. Later, after dessert and coffee, after the children have worn themselves out playing and the adults have shared more stories, Harold finds Grace in the workshop. She's adding one final touch to the family tree, a small sprig, carved to look like new growth. "For the future," she explains as he wraps his arms around her, "whatever it brings." Through the workshop window, they can see their families still mingling in the yard. Amanda and Jenny are exchanging recipes. Michael is showing Emma how to use a hand plane. The younger children are planning summer adventures together. "Look what we made," Grace says softly, and they both know she means more than just the carved tree between them. Together, Harold agrees, and the word holds all. The promise of spring. The marriage certificate waits on Harold's workbench, the formal black text stark against the aged wood. It's a simple document, but its presence makes everything feel real in a new way. Grace touches it gently, her finger tracing their names. "Ready?" Jenny asks from the doorway. They've chosen to hold the ceremony in Harold's backyard, now transformed by their jointly planted garden. The raised beds Harold built are filled with early summer blooms, and the new bench he designed sits among the flowers, its wood golden in the morning light. "Just need a minute," Grace says. Jenny understands, closing the door softly. Grace looks around the workshop where so much of their love story unfolded, her spoons hanging beside Harold's tools, the Christmas ornament catching light, the family tree they carved together, now updated with today's date. "I wish you could be here," she whispers, touching the velvet pouch that holds Tom's ring. "But then you are, aren't you? In all the memories that made me who I am." In the house, Harold stands before his bedroom mirror, adjusting his tie. Amanda helps with his collar, her eyes bright with tears. "Mom would love this," she says. "She always said you had too much love to keep it to memories." Harold touches his pocket watch, Sarah's last gift to him. Think she and Tom are having a laugh about all this? Their stubborn spouses finding each other? Probably planned the whole thing. Amanda grins. "You know how Mom loved playing matchmaker." The ceremony is small, intimate. Their children and grandchildren form a loose circle in the garden. Mr. Line from the jewelry shop officiates. Turns out he's also a justice of the peace. The town newspaper's photographer stands discreetly to one side, knowing this is one story Pine Valley will want to remember. Grace walks from the workshop to the garden on Michael's arm. She's wearing a simple blue dress that makes her eyes shine. In her hands, she carries a bouquet of herbs and flowers from their new garden, bound with one of Harold's wood shavings, curved into a ribbon. Harold waits by the bench they built together, his face lighting up at the sight of her. The grandchildren have scattered wood shavings and flower petals along the path, creating a walkway that smells of fresh wood and summer blooms. "Friends, family, neighbors," Mr. Klein begins, "we're here to celebrate something rare and wonderful, love that knows no season, no boundaries, no limits." The ceremony they've written together speaks of experience, of growth, of hearts that learn to expand. They exchange rings, Harold's carved box opening smoothly to reveal them, simple gold bands that catch the garden light. "These rings," Harold says, his voice steady, "represent not just our love for each other, but all the love that brought us here. The love we learned from Tom and Sarah, the love we share with our children, the love we're discovering together." "Like trees adding rings," Grace continues, "we grow richer with each layer of love we experience. These bands are new, but they carry the wisdom of every love that shaped us. Their kiss is gentle, perfect. The grandchildren cheer, and someone in the back, probably Mrs. Peterson, sniffles loudly. The reception spreads through the garden and into the workshop. Tables hold a blend of old and new traditions. Grace's maple cookies, beside Sarah's fruitcake recipe that Amanda mastered. The wooden family tree holds a place of honor, its branches now bearing small photos of all their shared moments. They dance on the patio, moving to the same slow songs they danced to at New Year's. But this time, there are no interruptions, no hesitations, just the sure knowledge that they've found their way to exactly where they should be. "Look," Grace whispers, nodding toward the workshop. Emma is showing Peter how to use the lathe, their heads bent together over the wood. "Another generation of makers," Harold says proudly. As evening falls, they light candles in mason jars throughout the garden. The marriage certificate has moved from the workbench to a frame Harold carved, ready to hang beside the family tree. Their gathered loved ones share stories, laughter, and dreams for the future. "A perfect day," Jenny says, hugging them both. "A perfect beginning," Grace corrects gently, squeezing Harold's hand. Later, after the guests have gone and the garden holds only moonlight and memory, they sit together on their bench. The scent, of wood and flowers mingles in the summer air. Mrs. Matthews, Harold says softly, testing the sound. Grace leans into him, her ring catching starlight. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Above them, stars wheel in their ancient dance. In the workshop, their tools wait for tomorrow's projects. And here, in the garden they planted together, love blooms as naturally as flowers reaching for the sun. The new workshop sign reads, Matthews and Matthews Woodworkers, its hand-carved letters catching the morning sun. 1 year has transformed not just their lives, but the space where their love first grew. Now their workbenches stand side by side, and the walls display both Harold's intricate boxes and Grace's carefully crafted spoons. Another order for your cookie boards, Harold says, holding up an email from Jenny, who's been helping them manage their growing online presence. People love the story, how they're made by a woodworker and tested by a baker. Grace smiles, sanding the edge of her latest creation. Who would have thought, at our age, becoming artisans with a following? They've started teaching workshops. Together on Saturdays, Harold handles the technical aspects, while Grace shares her baker's insight into working with natural materials. Their students range from curious teenagers to retirees looking for new hobbies, all drawn by the warmth of their shared expertise. Remember when you first taught me to use a plane? Grace asks, running her hand along a finished board. How nervous I was about ruining the wood. And now look at you, Harold says proudly, teaching others, though you still make better bread than you do dovetails, and you still can't crimp a pie crust to save your life. Their laughter mingles with the workshop sounds, sanders humming, wood being shaped, the gentle tapping of mallets. The unfinished rocking chair, now complete, sits in their living room, holding quilts and grandchildren with equal grace. Through the window, they can see their garden flourishing. The raised beds Harold built are bursting with herbs and flowers, and the bench they made together has weathered to a beautiful silver grey. On sunny days, they take their coffee breaks there, planning new projects and sharing quiet moments. Emma called, Harold mentions, starting the coffee maker they've added to the workshop. She wants to apprentice here next summer, says she's serious about learning the craft. Tom would have loved that, Grace says softly. A grandchild carrying on a family tradition, even if it's not the one he expected. Their first anniversary approaches, and with it, a town celebration. Pine Valley has claimed their love story as its own, a testament to the possibility of joy in every season. The newspaper still features them occasionally, especially when they host their popular wood and wheat workshops, teaching both woodworking and bread making in the same day. The wooden family tree has grown, new branches added for marriages and births. Grace's grandson Peter is engaged, and Emma's starting college in the fall. Life moves forward, carrying them all in its gentle current. Sometimes, Grace says, accepting her coffee cup. I think about that first morning, when you came out to help me with the firewood. Best decision I ever made, Harold replies, pulling her close, though I didn't know it then. They've kept their morning routine, but now it includes shared projects, joint planning, and the quiet joy of working side by side. Their skills complement each other. Harold's precision, balancing Grace's intuition, her creativity enhancing his technique. The workshop has become a gathering place. Grandchildren drop by to learn and play. Their children come for advice and company, and friends stop in to share coffee and conversation. Every surface holds memories of their journey. The Christmas ornament, the Valentine heart, the ring box. That changed everything. Ready for another year? Harold asks, his arms around her waist. Grace turns in his embrace, her face soft with happiness. Ready for all of them. Outside, spring is returning again to Pine Valley. New flowers push through the soil they turn together, and morning light catches the workshop sign, making it glow like a beacon. Inside, two people who thought their hearts were done with love continue proving themselves wonderfully wrong. The coffee pot burbles its last, and Grace pours them each a fresh cup. They have orders to fill, students to teach, and a lifetime of mornings to share. Their love story, begun in winter's quiet moments, continues to bloom in every season, as natural as wood grain, as reliable as fresh-baked bread, as enduring as the rings they wear. Harold raises his cup in their daily toast. To us, to love, Grace adds, touching her cup to his, and to all the stories yet to come.